Hello, I'm Robin Smith, and I'm going to answer some of your questions about boundaries and communication. These came into my Facebook group, the Rock Your Relationships Sisterhood Facebook group, link below. So here you go. About boundaries, why do I hesitate to set them or wait until I'm so frustrated and mad that any chance of having a smooth conversation has diminished and turns into a patterned reaction? Okay, so that's one question. Of course, I don't know specifically why you might, but what I've seen is really common is that people are afraid to set boundaries. So that's why they hesitate to set them. And usually what they're most afraid of is pushing somebody away or them getting rejected back. So you're afraid that if you set a boundary, the person might push back, they might resist, they might judge you, they might reject you, or maybe you're afraid of conflict, or even at the worst, losing the relationship. So that's generally what I see is why people hesitate, because of these big fears are in the way, and then they don't know how to be more skillful with setting boundaries, because there are skillful ways to do that. And that when you learn how to set boundaries skillfully, then you don't have to be as afraid, because you're not necessarily, boundaries don't necessarily push somebody away. They don't have to when they're set skillfully. You can do it in a way that really owns your own limits and don't have to make it about somebody else. And of course, each situation is different. So there's boundaries with people you want to be closer with. There's boundaries with people that you don't want to be closer with, and how you set those boundaries is going to be different. But hopefully that's somewhat helpful to answer your question. Let's look at the next one. So here's the next question. Why do boundaries with my sweet, supportive partner feel so threatening to me? I wrestle to set boundaries until I'm sick and then blurt them out even after rehearsing in my head for days about it. I realize that my early childhood relationships explain the origins of a lack of boundaries, but I've gone to therapy for a long time, and the partner is not part of that story. Why doesn't the logic click? Okay, I think that's pretty much the same answer and pretty much the same scenario, right? So just realize that you're not alone in this, that you may understand why you don't have healthy boundaries, but you still may be really afraid. I think you're right, based on old childhood patterns where you weren't allowed to have a voice, maybe, or where you got rejected. And so it's going to be more scary to voice your truth, to set limits, to be honest and authentic with who you are and what you're willing or not willing to do. That might be threatening when it was threatening as a child, when your authenticity wasn't allowed, when you were punished for being yourself, or you were made to try to be somebody that you weren't. So that could be a real source of your fear of setting boundaries. Again, this deepest fear that most people have is a fear of losing the relationship. It may not be conscious that you have that fear, but that's usually what's hiding underneath this fear of disappointing somebody, or this fear of them getting upset with you, is ultimately you might be afraid of losing the connection. So I hope that helps to answer your question. And again, like how to work with that then might be to work with your own self-worth and work with your own valuing who you are as your authentic self, so you can stand with more confidence in who I am is important, and who I am matters, and I deserve to have what I want, and I deserve to live my life on my terms. And it doesn't have to push people away or hurt people when I do that. But I get to make my own choices. So that is really important when we're wanting to be clear with people and be truthful, that we feel okay about who we are. We're not ashamed of who we are, or embarrassed, or feeling like we're not worth having what we want or don't deserve it in some way. So all that has to come underneath and support your capacity to then speak this truth. So hopefully that's helping with your question. Next question. I have a friend who was in a verbally abusive marriage for 20 years that she finally left. Now she's newly married again with one of her strongest boundaries as not tolerating for any verbal abuse. However, her new husband is a wounded soul with a trauma background. Overall, their marriage is good, and he does not do it often, but when he is triggered into an emotional flashback, he may yell or say ugly things. Yeah. So great contextualizing it that it'd be better if she was the one asking the question and getting the answer directly, but it seems like she understands that she's made a better choice in this marriage, and that this person still has his wounds, so he's acting out in ways that aren't healthy and aren't positive for their relationship. But she also can see that he's not that guy that she was married to before, that he's different, and it's got some really positive qualities. So when we can see that, then we can ideally take things less personally, not feel so wounded by them. That said, when you've already had this wound from before and you've been hurt so much already, it's going to be harder to just be okay with it. So it makes a lot of sense to me why she would have this really firm boundary. So if I were in her shoes and she doesn't want this verbal abuse, who does? It's hard for her to let it be like he's just got bad behavior right now. I would remove myself from the room. I would say, I'm not going to stick around that communication. So really letting him know that's not okay. I don't deserve that. I'm not taking that, and just remove yourself. So that's one suggestion for a healthy boundary in that situation. Okay. I'm sure other women struggle with a similar feeling of setting a stern enough boundary without physically leaving the relationship. I would love some insight on scenarios similar to this so I can help my friend, and also okay, this is the same person. Sorry about that. So I think I've done that you have to get really, everything I've already said is supporting what I'm saying for this person specifically. Like you got to really land in your self-worth. And there might be some work to do. If you've been putting up with abuse, it may be because you felt you deserved it. And if you're really good at having a boundary now, then that's great. And you've come some distance with that one. And then the practice is to really assert it and to be very clear that I don't deserve this. This isn't about me. I'm not taking this abuse, and to remove yourself. So you can do that in the context of a relationship, and even a healthy one. Sometimes people are triggered from their past, and they're saying things they don't mean or they regret later. And if there's repair, and I think you talked about that in another part of your question, then that's a really good sign. So it'd be really good to sit down and talk about this outside of the moment, and just name everything that's happening and name your boundaries, so you don't have to, do it as much in the moment. And you can say it in the moment, or you could just walk away. Like I said, I'm not taking that, it can be simple. So those are some suggestions. Okay, let's see. How do you rebuild communication pathways if you feel you've had a hard time being heard? So that's one question. Or how do you try to be open yourself to feeling confident in your truths to be able to share what's really going on for you? Another question. And then otherwise you felt a shrinkage of yourself or anxiety around trying to communicate. Yeah, so I think what you're really pointing to is this confidence piece around being heard, and being that, like I'm just coming back to that every time with every question, right? You have to get really solid in yourself that you deserve to be heard, that you deserve someone listening to you, that you deserve to have what you want. And if that's not there, it's going to be hard to speak from that place, right? So that has to be the inner work first. And then if you are in that place and you're still not getting heard, like that happens, some people don't know how to listen, don't know how to hold space, then you need to assert that. If you want that relationship, then you need to assert, hey, I need to be heard right now, or please don't interrupt, or whatever it is that you need to say. So so you're commanding their attention, you're demanding it or asking for it, requesting it. So it really is like advocating for yourself from a place of I deserve it and I'm worth it. And I can't just tell you you're worth it. You have to get that from the inside, right? So there might be some inner work to do around that. And the confidence as well. You have to build confidence. You can't just have it automatically, right? So you have to generate that for yourself. And that's going to help you from this thing that you're saying, how you feel a shrinkage of yourself or anxiety around trying to communicate. So when you build this self-worth, this confidence, and this feeling of I deserve it, then you're going to be a lot less anxious with people. Okay, so that's your work. I sometimes struggle with feeling like having certain boundaries equals abandoning my partner or being unsupportive. Yeah, you are so not alone in that one. So again, and people think of boundaries as like pushing somebody away or putting up a big wall, and it doesn't have to be, especially with someone you want to keep close. But we do need boundaries sometimes when somebody is crossing our boundaries a lot, doesn't get where our limits are, is pushing. Then we unfortunately do have to assert them, or else we're going to get our boundaries pushed and we're going to get angry about that. And then there's going to be this thing between us and we're going to act out or we're going to get resentful or whatever it is. So it does need to be expressed, but it doesn't have to be harsh. It doesn't have to be mean. It can be stated clearly, like this isn't working for me. This is what I need right now. You can explain why it's not working for you. So these basic communication skill that you may or may not have, but they're important to learn so that you can come across from your heart, ideally, instead of from like your anger. So that's what I would suggest. Why did my ex-partner always consider my boundaries as expectations? He would tell me I expect too much from him and ask me why I couldn't just love him for who he was and not expect him to change. Yeah, well, I don't know exactly, what was your dynamic. Nobody wants to be kind of having this pressure to change. So that could have been how you express them for sure. If they came across that way, it could also be him, and that he already has a lot of inner pressure and feels like everything is turned into like I have to do more. I'm not accepted as I am. So it could be the lenses he's wearing that he's seeing it that way when you didn't mean it that way. So I don't know exactly, but I think both of those things need to be looked at for you guys. And then someone's saying, when setting healthy boundaries is met with defensiveness and avoidance, he's addressing his trauma, but it's a long road. So what do you do about that when you're setting boundaries and you think they're healthy boundaries, but you're getting met with defensiveness and avoidance? Yeah, that's just hard because, again, like the last question, it could be because that person already has a lot of armoring or a lot of fear of being criticized and is receiving a lot of things as criticism when they're not, because they grew up with a lot of criticism, or there could be situations like that, or earlier relationships where there was. So they may have a really easily triggered around like being told how to do things differently, or that they're not doing something right, or they're going to interpret that they're not doing it right. Oh, I always do it wrong, so they might be really sensitive to that. So that's, again, where it might be helpful to sit down outside of the heat of the moment and talk about these things and share, what you need and want, and let them know your greater intention is not to hurt them or push them away or make them change, but that you actually have certain, limits to your tolerance about what you can do or willing to do, or things like that. So if you lay out your boundaries in a safe time and place, that might be helpful. And then you can share about how you respond when you perceive him or her getting defensive or avoidant, and that, to really express that you want to be heard, or that, you want to be understood, or whatever it is. This is where those communication skills are really helpful. So if you missed the communication training, I do have a communication checklist, and that is a really simple thing you can download. It's like one page of several points around communication. You can check off and kind of rate yourself with how you're doing. And if you're not checking it off, then there's a tip there. So there's several tips around how to communicate skillfully, especially in difficult situations. So I highly recommend you grab that for yourself. It's in a link below this video, the Connection Cure Communication Checklist. And if you're somebody who knows you need more support and that this isn't just about communication skills, but it actually might run deeper for you around your self-worth, your relationship to yourself, or anxiety, or bigger issues and old patterns that keep playing out even though you get some skills, then that's when you might need your hand held more than a checklist or a simple training, that you might need to really get somebody to support you working through these old beliefs and these old ways that you think about yourself, your negative self-talk and things like that. And that is the work that I do. So if you are interested in working with me around that, then below this video I have my relationship breakthrough session, and I do have times available. So click that link if you would like to meet with me. It's totally free, and at least right now, and that's where we can look at what you're struggling with and where you want to be, and I can help you with even a quick tip on how to get you closer to what you want, and we can talk about what further support would look like if that's of interest to you. So I encourage you to check out the checklist and the breakthrough session if you're wanting more. And thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe so more people find this video. And I hope you have a beautiful day or evening. Bye for now.